Hey, everybody, it's Friday afternoon. We've almost made it to the weekend. Before that, we have a great conversation today with Dr. Natalie Petouhoff, uh, advisor, consultant, thought leader in many different topics, author. Natalie, how are you?
I'm fantastic. Thank you.
Well, thanks for joining. I've followed your career and your work on social media for some time. So it's really a delight to have you here and to chat about all things CX, EX, employee experience, AI, and beyond. Before that, perhaps you could introduce yourself to the viewers here and talk about your fascinating journey.
It has been a fascinating journey. Thank you. I started out as an engineer. I studied material science and metallurgy, and that was the very beginning of really thinking about, how do you as a company think about your products and services and deliver them? And it was in the auto industry, and I can tell you a story about that. And then I went from engineering to actually looking at technology and the technology that serves customers and employees. Spent time as a management consultant, so part of the big four consulting firms. Great education, great learnings. Got to see a lot of different companies and how they do things. Some great, didn't always lead to the outcomes that they wanted to. Really looked at the connection between technology, experiences, and what exactly you need to do to get the technology to do the things that it's been promised. Also spent time as an analyst, which was great, really looking at what does it take to develop technology that delivers on promises. And also have spent a great deal of time in vendors and helping them actually actualize the services and products that they want to deliver to the marketplace.
That's so fascinating. Yeah, you from analyst to sales leader to author and advisor. It's not a straight line, a ladder, like we talk about. But it seems like you have quite a few common threads across all those different areas of work.
What was fun for me is the ability to sit in the seat of different roles and different people to truly understand what is it that if you're a vendor and you're trying to serve a company that's trying to create experiences, are you really sitting in the seat of those customers? And then as a consultant, understanding what their wants and needs are, and how do you really look at understanding their needs, right? So they're trying to take the technology, they're looking at their current processes, policies, and understand their current state, right? And get a sense of that, and then look at the gaps and then figure out, okay, where is it really not working? Where are we not retaining our employees? Where are we not retaining our customers? And then thinking about, okay, well, if we made these changes, right, and we
Mm.
use this technology to fill those gaps, how would that actually transform the experience? And then part of what I've been trying to do all along in my career is build economic models, right? Because you can talk a lot about transforming experiences, and a lot of people think, especially with the title of the book, Empathy, they think I'm talking about building kumbaya factories, and I'm not. I'm actually saying that you have two amazing assets, right? You have customers and you have employees. Without employees, you really can't build products and services, right? To deliver on those promises. And then if you don't have customers, there's no one to buy them, right? And this is like breaking it down to its basic elements, which that's kind of like what my engineering degrees did. I studied material science and metallurgy, and we looked at an atomic level. Why is steel made up of what it's made up of, and why can you crash a
Mm.
car into the back of a bumper, and like why does it absorb all that energy versus the materials that create a tire, right? And how can a tire go over a bump and not crack,
Mm.
right? So breaking things down to their very basic elements and understanding them from that point of view, I think is really important. And when I started to really look at, because I've been in the industry a long time, there have been studies done by Forrester as well as Bain and Company, And they look at, when you interview executives, if you ask them, how are we doing on our customer experience? 80% will say, thumbs up, we're fantastic. But then when you go to talk to employees, especially post-pandemic, which I think has completely changed the workforce, and you ask customers, they'll say, we really don't think, 80% will say, we really don't think companies are getting it still. So those studies were done 15 years apart. So what's fascinating to me is to look at those details and go, wait a minute, here's practically the same study, same questions. And yet 15, 20 years later, we're really still not meeting the expectations of the two most important assets. So when I talk about customer and employee experience, I'm really looking at the bottom line for those two key assets in your company, and how are their experiences driving things like costs, and how are they driving revenue and increased profits and margins. And when you really start to break it down to those elements, that's where it becomes, for me, really fascinating, is connecting experiences to business metrics, to business outcomes, and the success that you can have or you can be struggling with.
Yeah, it's a fantastic approach. And the title alone, Empathy in Action, is so interesting. I think we lack as a society now empathy and kindness, perhaps. But you made that connection when it comes to customer experience and employee experience. Where did that connection come from originally?
So in my years, oftentimes I'll be working with the boards or executive leadership, and they'll hear the concepts of employee and customer experience. And what I realized what they were hearing was sympathy, right? And sympathy is a natural human interaction, right? It's part of an impulse. When someone says, I'm struggling with this, or I'd like more information on this, or our natural inclination is to offer help or compassion. And so that's really what sympathy is. And a lot of the conversations that we have in customer service are really sympathy oriented. I'm so sorry that's happening to you. Let me see what I can do about it. They're not
Or
really
almost pity more than
well, so
sympathy. But yeah.
yes. Sometimes it can be pity. Sometimes it can be from a internal perspective, right?
Mm.
Versus empathy is the ability, at least the definition that we're using from Daniel Goleman, is the ability to sit in the seat of someone else, to look at the world from their point of view, not from your own personal point of view. And I think a lot of companies, especially when you look at those studies, when they look at the experiences that they think they're delivering, they're looking at it from their point of view. But when they sit in the seat of the customer or the employee, oftentimes what I find that they find through their own discovery process is, oh, yeah, I wouldn't want to put up with that either if I was a customer, right? So the
Mm.
concept here is to distinguish sympathy. I'm sorry that's happening to you. That must be so frustrating. I can understand how disappointed you are. Those kind of statements, right? From actually solving the problem. So, and solving the problem, not from your own perspective, but from the perspective of the other. And I think that's really where, if business is missing the mark on a lot of things today, it's really because they're not sitting in the seat of their two most important assets and taking the time to understand from that other perspective why that is so really missing what people want and need. And when you do that, the insights and the information and the clarity that you get gives you the direction for leadership to be able to know, this is the direction that we really should be going in. And this is what I really should have my team really looking at. It also gives, if you're a vendor and you're trying to build software, where does that direction for product development come from? And when you sit in the seat, and this kind of goes back to design thinking, is that ability to sit in the user's seat, the person actually using that software. And when you go to develop it, is it helping that employee deliver that experience? And at the end of the day, because what we're really driving, what we're really selling as a vendor is experiences, right? And if they're in the cloud, they could be experiences as a service, right? So does the software deliver to the end user, right, to that customer, the experiences that garner that loyalty, that retention, that brand affinity? And I think that the concept, and it's interesting because the book has been out a year and a half now, and it's fascinating because I'm still explaining the difference. Like, why is it empathy, right? What's the difference between empathy and sympathy? Is it kindness? I personally think that it is kindness to deliver great experiences, right? But my end goal is to help people see that when you deliver an experience that is extraordinary, and an extraordinary, basically what it's doing is it's meeting the needs and expectations of that customer and employee. And because most of the time those needs are not met, it feels incredibly extraordinary, right? Because our expectations and our like perspective is, I have to contact customer service. This is going to be a pain. I'm not going to get what I need. They're not going to understand. I'm going to have to explain it. And then they're going to say a bunch of weird scripted stuff back to me that's really inauthentic and it's not genuine, right? And so we have this expectation we don't even want to reach out. And so what I'm really wanting when I talk to leaders is to try and help them understand this connection between whether you're a vendor creating software that's going to deliver an experience to employees and customers, or whether it's a company implementing the software. Are you really looking at it from those two perspectives? And when you do, and I'd be happy to help you, and when you do, what do you learn that you didn't know that you didn't know? And those are your blind spots, right? And in life, we all have blind spots, and that's really can be self-limiting. But when we uncover them, that can truly be the key to great growth and self-awareness.
Wow, wonderful insights. You must have so many anecdotes and real life experiences where empathy made a difference. Do you care to share any? Any come to mind off the top of your head?
Yeah, so part of the work that I've been doing with a large delivery company, they do a lot of food delivery, is that when we interviewed customers and we did our research, what they said was, we don't want sympathy. We do not want you to say, oh, I'm so sorry. I understand. This must be really frustrating. When they contact, either by phone or by chat, whatever the channel is, they want to know that you got what their issue is. And the way that they judge that is how you respond. So if you start with a script and you start to say somebody's name 3 times, they know that you're not really authentically responding, right? And it's really irritating to hear your name 3 times. I really hope there's no call centers out there doing that anymore. And to really hone in and understand, and this is where AI and technology can help, is gathering that information on the front of the interaction to understand what is that person calling or interacting with the company, what is that about? And then how quickly can you get to the solution, right? And so that takes a lot of strategy to set up your department, your group, your processes, your policies, how you approach this so that you're very solution oriented. And I think there's like a bit of corporate amnesia. So what I find fascinating is that we're all customers, right? We all buy stuff, no matter what level you are, right? We're still people, right? And we still buy stuff. And so what I would encourage leaders to do is, as they interact and get customer service, how do they feel, right? What is their feeling towards the brand, their likelihood to repurchase, their likelihood to give that company their business when the experience is frustrating, right? Or when you contact a company, they can see you where you've been on the website, they can see what you have in the shopping cart, they have some predictive interactive analytics, customer journey analytics, or the chatbot has asked some clarifying questions, and right away that agent or that bot can get right to what the issue is and begin to solve it. And some of that has to do with how you've actually set up how you're going to solve those issues. And sometimes companies don't realize, but they're really not setting themselves up to solve the customer's issue. So if you look at the most frequent types of interactions, for it's going to be like in the case of food delivery, it's going to be some missing item, or it's going to be something not prepared correctly. So if you know what those kind of top case types are going to be, plan on how you're going to help either the bot and or the agent be able to solve those and get right to the solution. And I think what we've learned is when you cut out all that non-value added language and all that lack of sincerity and authenticity, and you get right to the issue, what's fascinating is the goals of the customer, the employee, and the business are all met. So for instance, think about this. Does a customer want to have a long average handle time? Do they want to talk to you for a long time? No, they do not. They want to reach out. They want to explain or have you understand and get it solved. Think about it, average handle time from the employee's point of view. Do they want to be on that interaction for 20, 30 minutes with the same customer? No. Most people who take those jobs are very invested in the types of people who really want to make a difference and have a great interaction. And then go on to the next and help the next person and the next person and the next person. So I think that's really important. So you look at employees. Employees don't want to have a long average handle time. Now, let's connect those two experiences to business metrics. Do companies want to have a long average handle time? No. So if you're able to really identify the issue, know beforehand for these top cases, here's the kinds of things that we can offer that customer, and quickly and easily get them on their way, we've not only met the criteria for a great customer experience, we've met the criteria for a great employee experience, which that's where your loyalty to, and retention of top talent, and we've met the business metrics. And so what we've shown is by going through this process of as is could be gap, is looking at those experiences and then determining how can we make the experience great from everyone's point of view, from the customer, the employee, and the business, and reduce costs and increase revenue. And that's really what my focus is today.
Well, it sounds so simple. If only it were so. And people like me are techies, geeks. We, in this space, we love to talk about AI and cloud and telephony and orchestration and stuff like that. But what is the balance between all the tech we love to talk about and the business empathy, consumer side of things? What's the balance, and how do you connect the tech with the humanity of the people in the organization? And that's something you have a lot of experience with, I think.
Yeah, I'm one of those people that sits kind of, and that goes back to the resume question that you asked me earlier. One of the things that I wanted to be able to do was to really understand the technology. So I dove deep into being an analyst and dove deep into management consulting and becoming a systems integrator and being on the front line and understanding when you take a piece of technology, what does it take to actually implement it to get these results? So I spent my time there, and then spending the time looking from the company's point of view and the leadership's point of view. Like, they have metrics, they have goals, they have a business to run, they need to reduce their costs, they need to increase revenue, but oftentimes they're not doing it by considering the employee and the customer, and as a result, they're actually increasing their costs. And so I think there's a very strong balance between the business aspect, right, and understanding this perspective of who you're serving, right? And if we go back to Clayton Christensen, what's the job to be done? So if you look at the technology is supposed to deliver a chat or a phone call. If you look at the employee's job, they're delivering an interaction. So when you look at the technology, It's sold to deliver an experience, but have you actually checked to see if that experience meets the criteria of the people you're serving? And so, in theory, right, in marketing speak, or here's the benefits you'll receive, right? Conceptually, it does. But what I'm really encouraging, and I'm working with a lot of vendors these days, is to sit down and understand from a development point of view, as well as an experience point of view, are we creating experiences that deliver those on those promises? And if you are, then why wouldn't everybody on the planet want to buy what you're creating? Right?
That's a great point.
It makes it so, like, companies are struggling with revenue, they're struggling with profits, they're struggling with growth, especially in an economic recession. And so when I talk about empathy, often it's misunderstood because people think I'm asking them to spend more, or it's HR, or it's being nice to people, or pizza parties, or acknowledgement. And I'm like, oh, those are all good things, right? But what I'm really saying is, if you're developing product, test it, understand who you're building it for, understand what the experience is. And then when you say, it's going to deliver this better experience, or ROI, or lower average handle time, or increase first contact resolution, did it. And I'm fascinated by the number of times that nobody actually checks to see, before you buy it, can it do that, right? And after you buy it, did it accomplish the goals? And here's the secret to being a great vendor, is if you can accomplish those things, everyone on the planet will want to buy what you have. So simple, seems simple, but it's not as simple as it seems, because it's a machine and we're asking the machine to do a certain thing. And then if you're a company, right, and you think about two things. One is in terms of employees. So I think the pandemic created what I would call a cause for pause. And in that cause for pause, what it did was, it did a lot of things, but one of which gave us an opportunity to really self-reflect. And in that self-reflection, a lot of us asked ourselves, is this what I really want for my life? Is this what I really want to do? And so there are a lot of really, I think, really big questions that were asked. And as we understand those big questions, I think what happened when we began to return to the office, there's the whole conversation about work remotely or not work remotely, is that a lot of people said, I really want something different, right? And so you had the great resignation, you have quiet quitting, you have this force back into the office, because a lot of times, well, it could be corporate real estate, but it also could be because of the perception of productivity, right? And so if you're creating a great workforce and you're creating an amazing place to work, guess what? You're going to be the place that everybody wants to come to work for. You won't have a problem recruiting and retaining amazing employees. You will have the top talent. You will become the employer of choice. And who wouldn't want to be that, right? And then you have employees who are motivated, who are innovative, who are productive, right? And so what I'm suggesting is, when you sit in the seat of your employees and understand the experience of working at your company, have you really created a culture that garners this, right? And I think it's something that a lot of leaders are skipping over, right? They're using a push versus a pull model. If you're so magnetic and so amazing as a leader and as a company to work for, you're going to pull all those employees to your company, right? So then that's the employee part of this equation. And the second part of the equation is customers. So if you're really listening to what customers want and need, and you deliver on that promise, and you sincerely deliver on it, right? Then who wouldn't buy from you? Why wouldn't? And people are going to word of mouth. They're going to talk about what you have. They're going to tell others. They're going to post online. They're going to tell their friends at the cocktail party or the cookout. right? So really, again, we're going back to the concept of empathy, but really sitting and really listening to what customers want. And I'll give you a short story. I was working for a company that created diaper bags, and
Okay.
they're right. This was
Important
a
product. You don't want
important.
that product to fail. That's a very key feature
You
of
don't.
that product.
And they were looking for a new customer, right? A new line to create. And they had created all different bags, and they had one of the top bags, because of the compartments and how easy it was to use and all the things that you could store and the accessories that came with it. But they were really looking to see what next, right? And they were having a hard time figuring it out. So I said, well, let's go on social media, digital media, and let's look at what customers are saying. And we found a whole cohort of men who were talking about the importance of diaper bags. And they said, but it would be like, love this diaper bag, but it would be really great if it came in something besides flowers, right? They wanted a different, I don't know, denim, leather, wanted something different. So in listening to that feedback, and it was a very simple change, right? It wasn't like completely re-innovating something. It was just really listening to what that particular customer cohort wanted. We created a whole new line, and it's the most successful line on the planet. So
Wow, that's such a great story.
isn't so what's fascinating to me, Evan, is this is so simple. So simple. We're making it really hard. And I, a lot of I grew up in the American auto industry. My dad worked for Ford. I worked for General Motors, and I think that I remember studying Deming. Edward Deming was the father of quality, and his premise, right, and his kind of I didn't get to actually meet him, but one of I would say my mentors, my intellectual mentors, was Deming, because he was saying this all the way back then, right, in the 1950s and 60s. Really take a look at what your employees and your customers are saying and understand that. And when you do that, you can transform your industry as well as your company. And just like people are misunderstanding sympathy and empathy today when I speak, Deming had a hard time getting the American auto industry to hear. And so he went and he got a different audience, and he went to Japan, and Japan heard him. And there they transformed the Japanese auto market, and it's transformed the overall global market, probably forever. And so I think this is one of those fundamental shifts that seems really simple, can be easily misunderstood. But when you get it, when you have that visceral, oh, that's what we mean. We mean really paying attention to the two most important assets that we have in a company and delivering on their expectations and maybe even wowing them, right? And not looking at this from kumbaya or not looking at this from kindness, but really looking at this as an economic model. Then you start to really understand the power that's right before us.
Fantastic. Well, as someone who's from the automotive industry, I think you appreciate, love or hate them, how Tesla is so engaged with its community, its customers, and is constantly, engaging with them on social media and other channels, getting feedback, and there's that almost, familial relationship they have with their fanatical customers that even from the top, Elon and his shenanigans still it translates into just obsessive kind of feedback. So this is great. Do you have a playbook when it comes to consulting or evaluating, recommending software vendors? I mean, what's your process for, engaging with clients, new clients, existing clients? How do you put together a framework for, you know, picking vendors and navigating that whole journey?
So part of what I do is I ask, what are your leadership goals? Like
Hmm.
the people that, so let's say I get brought into CX or I get brought into the technology group. I ask, what are the business goals, right? So the people that you report to, if this was a perfect engagement, what would a great outcome look like, right? Because at the end of the day, you're going to say, hey, we brought Dr. Nat in. Here's what we accomplished. So let's start with the beginning and work towards that. In the beginning, we're going to work towards this end in mind so that we make sure that we really hit that note. And then I start to look at people. I look at process. I look at technology. I look at metrics. I look at finances. I look at budget. So it's really doing an overall assessment. And part of what I'm finding is that oftentimes, because there's a technology department, there's a customer experience department, there's HR, a lot of times what happens in companies is these departments don't really talk to each other and they don't really share common goals. And so what can happen is every department has a goal and every department is doing what they're doing. And sometimes they actually contradict each other, right? And sometimes they actually compromise each other. So part of what we talk about is empathy-based conversations or cultures. So when you look at what you're doing, what are the adjacent departments, right? What departments, like in customer experience, obviously the technology group that's supplying the technology, right? If there isn't a really good understanding of here's our customers, here's our employees, here's the technology that we're looking at and the goals that we really want to deliver versus technology, and I'm including myself in this, right? Because I've been a technologist for a very long time, is that sometimes we can be so focused on what we think in terms of what is the right technology versus looking at what is that business goal, right? So technology based on a business goal is very different than technology based on some sort of spec, right? And so really getting people to what I would call practice empathy cultures, to have conversations with each other and be flexible enough, slow down, right? Slow down to go fast, be able to have conversations where people are hearing, here's what I'm trying to accomplish, right? And so oftentimes when I first worked as a management consultant, I was what I would call the facilitator between various departments. And so I would hear what customer experience would want to do. I could hear, from HR in terms of recruiting, hiring, training, what their goals were. And then I could hear from the technology group, they're picking this because they want a consistent platform across the whole enterprise, right? So marketing, sales, and service. But then when you actually look at the goals of what customer service wants to do, sometimes that technology isn't the best in class for that particular application. So there's a conflict, right? Do you want an easy system to maintain across different departments, or do you want a system that can deliver a specific goal? And those are sometimes compromises, decisions, but they're conversations that need to happen so that people can understand, oh, I see why you're leaning towards that. Let me tell you why this is important for these reasons, right? And to create that dialogue to be able to then what I would encourage oftentimes, because if you have that dialogue and you have a lot of power as a company, to go back to that vendor and say, collectively, as the technology department, as the customer experience department, here's what we're aiming for, right? How can you make this a better experience for both the technology group as well as the customer experience group? And you'd be surprised that feedback in and of itself is what's going to help vendors actually drive better products. And it's also because AI is so prevalent, the ability to quickly shift and change things. We now have, especially with the cloud and AI, it makes everything more agile, the ability to shift and to create those. But unless we're talking internally, right, about what each of our goals are, and we're sharing that with each other, and then we're going as a collective unit back to the vendor, we're not necessarily representing to them what they need. And I've actually seen situations where the vendor will pit one department against the other, right? Or there'll be like an internal conflict where customer service executives are saying, well, we want this one. And then technology group is saying, well, we want this one. And it becomes a fight. And it's like, but we're all trying to deliver
Mm,
the same thing, which is a great experience for our customers. So if we can, and part of what I do is look at that communication pattern and get people to
mm.
talk to each other. So some of this is very, very simple. Some of it is, a technical assessment of, do you have the technology that you really need to deliver that experience? But a lot of it comes down to internal communications and internal goals, and seeing that if we can do this together, how much power we have.
Wonderful, wonderful approach. So you're a prolific keynote speaker, and you've spoken at Dreamforce and Singularity University events, and it's great. We're all back in the world again. I assume you're speaking again and available. What's your approach to the keynote world, and are you looking forward to any in particular coming up?
I have a couple coming up this fall, which should be really exciting. And I think that, so when you write a book, right, and the title is empathy, it becomes very incumbent upon you to be that empathy leader and to practice it. So I spend a lot of time with leaders who bring me in to talk to their audiences about the things that are most important to them. And so trying to understand who's in that audience, what are their goals, what are they struggling with, and really listening and understanding what's important to them, right? So at the end of the day, going back to that, start with the end in mind, and really understanding what would be great for them, and then figuring out, of the years and the wisdom and from the scars and all the things that I've accumulated in terms of this particular industry, helping people see something that they can't see, right? Really looking at blind spots, looking at the opportunity to see customer experience, employee experience as a bottom line entity, that it's no longer something that we can ignore or something that we cannot address. It's something that is probably the most important aspect of your business today. And relating that to where they're at in that current moment, right? Because different people have different levels of understanding or needs. And so that's, if it's a technology group, then I'll speak more to the technology and interfacing with customer experience. If it's customer experience, then I'll talk about their job and their metrics and what's important to them, but then also bring in the other factors, right? Budget, finance, technology, all the other things that are going to feed into what they need to look at in terms of their own path forward.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for sharing your time. I know you're about to jet off somewhere. Any personal or professional travel coming up in August that you're going to get away at all, or are you
I am.
you stuck in
Um,
the heat in Southern California?
no, actually, I'm gonna go take some time off, spend some time in Cabo. So I'm very excited about that.
Oh, very nice. Well, have a great time. Thank you so
Thank
much for sharing your, vision and insights with the audience here. And thanks for watching. Reach out to Natalie on LinkedIn. You have a great presence there, lots of activity and posting and thoughtful commentary. And we'll catch you later. Thank you, Natalie.
thank you.